to rise. Risk not the wrath that sleeps and dreams. Heed the words of the wise.
There we go. Episode 24. We're back for another week's worth of the Close Order podcast, and Lewis has been incredibly rude, and he's gone to an event without me. Is this the first event you've been at without me?
Yes, this is the first time I've been out on my own, without my training wheels on.
Is this only your second event? I think you've run more events than you've actually played in, if that's
No,
right.
I've run 3 and been to 3, so I'm doing well. I did LGT, then a TSN event.
Of course, yeah.
And then now this one at the weekend.
Very good, very good. Well, glad to have you with us, and you've done upsettingly well, which is a real shame. So we'll have to take the focus off for a second. So we've got some of the usual faces here. How is everyone doing? Anthony's here first, as always. Good to have you, buddy. Carmen Rider Ace, woo evening, good background for painting, hopefully. Hell yeah. Good to get some hobbying done. William says, I thought Lewis was always the main character. You're dead to me.
Your check is in the post.
Yeah. Maybe I need to watch what I'm saying. Someone left a really bizarre comment on one of my older videos, one of the tier lists, saying that they're blocking my channel because I spat on 2 people who commented, which I'm very confused about.
You spat on them?
Apparently so. So here's the thing. You can't spit on someone through the internet.
No, I didn't realise that was something you were into, Ed.
God knows I tried. But yeah, no, it's bizarre. I don't really understand. I was like, oh, maybe... because there was one where I had a bit of an argument with someone in the comments because I thought they were being really condescending. And then both of us, weren't happy with how we'd spoken to the other and ended up apologising. So it's like, oh, maybe it's that one. And then I look, it's not. So yeah, if anyone's aware of me spitting on people, let me know. I'm kind of confused about that.
I love YouTube.
Yeah, Cam says no main character has to announce they're the main character. That's a Yamcha move. You aren't even a recurring character, so shut your mouth.
Oh, steady.
They've been very combative in the VIP section recently.
The VIP section of Discord has gone mad this week.
Yeah, I might actually need to rein it in a little bit. It has gone a bit much. Chris says, evening everyone. Good to have you, Chris. Hope you're doing well. Jordan is alive. Good stuff. Ryan's here for the first time catching a live stream. Hell yeah, Ryan. Good to have you. Goldfire, head of marketing. We will have no marketing in this chat. I'm not gonna say any more, but I hope that's clear. You don't want to be on a support tier that involves Ed spitting on us. I think if I wanted to monetize, I'd do it in a way where I spit on all the people who don't support me, but that seems really inefficient. That's
gonna be a lot of spit.
Yeah, that's almost all of the planet, so Ian's here. Good to have you, Ian. Hope you're doing well. Discord is amazing. What a good hobby space. Hell yeah, glad you're enjoying it.
Everyone's very nice to each other in our Discord, Ed.
They are. No, they are. In the VIP section, they're a little bit unhinged to me. But I've made sure to
the rest of it's fine.
Cultivate a community where people aren't dickheads, and the people who are dickheads don't really hang around for very long.
No.
Perfect.
It's difficult to do on the internet to get 750 people in a virtual room together and not have insults flying. It's quite nice, actually.
I think it's only 650 people on my Discord.
650, sorry. But still, close. Maybe in 100, the next 100 people will just descend into chaos and abuse.
Yeah. I don't like banning people, but...
No.
I guess there is always, that next 100 people. Perfect. Existence here as well. Good to have you, Existence. How are you doing on this fine evening? So, we're here to talk about, well, basically one thing and one thing only, and that is Lewis has gone to an event, and he's done well. The bastard.
I've done a thing.
He has done a thing. And we're going to talk about that. We're not going to talk about the Team England training weekend that I was at on the Saturday. I probably will do a video not specifically about that, but we've got a scrim against America as well. So at some point in the next couple of weeks, there'll be more WTC content coming as well. Although I do need to sort of nail down what I can and can't say. Because it's international practice. So I don't think, for example, they'll want me talking about their lists. That's probably not something that needs to be done. So
you'll get yourself in trouble.
Yeah, but also it's just a dick move, so gonna find the reasonable middle line. But before we do get on to the meat and potatoes of this one, if you are here and you haven't already, give the stream a like, a thumbs up. All of the commenting is great; it helps us get seen, promotes us in the YouTube algorithm, all of that good stuff. Steve says I'm not allowed to talk about my list either. I've heard. Well, it's up there. There's like 4 videos with it in already, so it's a little bit late for that.
It's going to involve dragon, and that dragon's probably going to move 40 inches in one turn.
Maybe. Yeah, I realised after posting that video that I have made my own life a little bit more difficult because everyone knows what I'm going to do, but it's okay. Keith says
Rising
the VIP
tide carries all boats, Ed. As everyone else around you gets better, you'll get better.
Yeah, that's fair. Keith says the VIP section is like a hidden level where shit goes off script. Yeah, there's no walls, and you can accidentally fall through the level and just be unhinged. Very good, very good. All right, well, do you want to just go straight into talking about the event? Let us know give us the top down before we get into actually what happened during the event.
Yeah, so this is a event by the fine gentleman Danny at Gothic Games in Canterbury. For anyone who doesn't know, Danny is a titan of the Warhammer community. He's the only person I know that's won one of those Warhammer Legends awards from Games Workshop. You know, they give out the award for being the best person, and he won that for a lot of the work he does about getting kids into Warhammer. So he's a teacher at a school in Canterbury, and that's where we play the events and things like that. So he does a lot of work around encouraging younger members of the community to get involved and raising money for charity and things like that. So genuine legend of the game. Supremacy. And he and I are on a very similar wavelength with how we like to run our events. Very relaxed, trying to make them as welcoming as possible, make new players feel welcome in the same way that veteran players would feel welcome, and hope that over the course of the event, those newer players are supported by the veteran players, and the veteran players, as the event progresses, start to play against other experienced players there. So very relaxed style, just a 1-day event, 3 games, and yeah, very much enjoyed it. Lots of fun terrain, really cool terrain. You'll see some photos from my first game where I was playing on like this dwarf hold, so it was like there was lots of mountains on the edge of the board and things you could go in and stuff like that. So it was really cool.
Nice. Sounds like a good place to be. You got plenty of pictures of it as well, which we can share in a second. But what were you taking? It was basically just your normal list that you've been playing a lot of, wasn't
it? Yes, kind of. It's a list I've been refining. I don't play a huge amount, probably play every other week. So it's not a list that I've got 1,000 reps into, but it's been building over the past few months. And I think I was saying after the event that I think it's quite balanced now. I'm feeling quite happy where it's at. There's a couple of changes I would make, and we can go on to that after, but I think broadly it's there or thereabouts. It's Vampire Counts list, obviously, for anyone that hasn't watched the show before. That's my big passion in the game at the moment. And I've veered away from the kind of big monster style list I was running at the start of the edition with the Dragon and the Terrorgeist. They're no longer present. Much more focused on the Blood Knights as a method of dishing out damage and supporting them effectively and trying to make the most of them as the way to actually make your way through your opponent's army. And as we'll see, it worked out quite well this weekend. So I'd be interested. I didn't play. I played against one dragon in my first game. So what I'm always conscious of is the exact as we. I don't know whether when that battle report's coming up, Ed, I keep asking you about it, but at some point that battle report is going to come up and it's going to have the prime example of what happens when you shove a dragon down Blood Knight's throat turn 1. So I need some more reps really into dragon lists to see whether I can make my way around that. I think it's lots of things I would do differently having now played
when he was playing against himself at guess when he was 9. He picked the bald guy wearing glasses.
I need to turn those off the podcast. I keep forgetting. Thank you very much, Steve. He said, I hear the last time Lewis won something was when he was playing against himself at Guess Who when he was 9. He picked the bald guy wearing glasses. I'm sure you had hair when you were 9.
I did. Weirdly, I'm doing a presentation at my old sixth form tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I dug out a photo of me when I was in that sixth form, and I had a lot of hair, which is slightly depressing nowadays.
I've realised I don't think I know you. I don't think I've ever seen you with hair. The entire time I've known you, you haven't been a hairy man. I'll have to go stalking your Facebook later, find some pictures.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I found the photo from sixth form, and there's some pretty embarrassing stuff if you go far enough back. So
excellent stuff. I will do that. Perfect. Sorry to cut you off.
That's right. I was just going to say, yeah, I haven't got a huge amount of practice into big dragons lists, and I'd like a few more reps into Bretonians as well to see where I'm at with it. But
yeah,
I think this weekend was a good run out of the concept, and I feel like it feels balanced. So I'm feeling like I've got the tools I need. I just need to test them now.
That sounds good. That does sound good. All right, lovely stuff. So good stuff on the event there, and obviously, as you're saying, more reps needed because Blood Knights are prime snacking. If you can put not necessarily one dragon into them, but if you can put a dragon and a unit champion into them, then they do fold pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right, so I think we should just go on to the pictures. I think that's probably the best.
Let's do it. Shall I walk you through my list?
Yeah, go for it. I'll put them on the screen, and you can do that as I have them up. There we go.
So, my general is a Master Necromancer. You'll be surprised to hear this is the classic Vampire Count Master Necromancer loadout. She's on the Mortis engine with the Crown of the Damned. So she's got the crown screaming at her that makes her stupid, but gives her the 4-up board save. She's got the Scepter of Denaro, so she can do resurrecting twice a turn. Spell familiar, so she can take that 5th spell. Obviously, she's level 4 wizard. Running Necromancy. It's worth noting actually that Danny, this event had quite minor comp. You couldn't have a unit that was more than 500 points, and you can only have one level 4. So that was all the comp that was in it, which I think is one of the original Throne of Skulls ones from ages ago.
Sure.
The Games Workshop put out. So yeah, that's my general. I also have another Necromancer, just level 3, obviously to fit with the comp. This Necromancer is on a Nightmare, so the horses that the Blood Knights ride, not the Black Knights. So Black Knights are on screen. They didn't make an appearance at the weekend. I've just finished painting them, and I must have sent them to you by accident. But yeah, here's my new Black Knights. Hope you like. They're also going to be my Knights of the Realm. But yes, that Necromancer has the Talisman of Protection, so it's got the 5-up ward, which did come in a couple of times. Actually, it's quite handy to have that.
Sure.
Also has a spell familiar, so you've got the 4 spells. And I gave her the Ruby Ring of Ruin. Probably taking that off. That's a change I'm making. Didn't use it enough. Wasn't worth it. And this one runs Dark Magic instead of Necromancy, which I found very, very useful on several occasions. I then have White Lord with the Battle Standard Bearer. He obviously unlocks the Graveguard to be in core, which I think is a really, really important part of the list because they're very good if you put them in core. And his Battle Standard Bearer's got the War Banner in it for the combat res. And he's got the Helm of Commandment, which is the helm which you recommended, I think, on the Fix My List stream, Ed, I put in there.
Yes.
A lot cheaper than Banner of the Barrows. And pass that leadership test and you get to add D3 onto your unit's weapon skill.
Which is a really nice defensive stat as well as offensive.
That's the thing I'd never appreciate. And I spoke to a couple of other Vampire Count players at the event this weekend, and they were like, "What? Hang on a minute. We've been paying this money to hit everything on 3s. Actually, against a lot of opponents, we could do that with this helm, but also make it harder for them to hit us, which is great." And actually, thinking on that I've currently run them with hand weapons and shields. Some people obviously like great weapons. I think with Helm of Commandment, I'd be tempted to try great weapons.
Sure.
See if the weapon skill is enough of a defensive buff to outweigh the fact you're losing armor.
Yeah.
But that needs some more playing around with. And then I had two Banshees in there, the Saffron Shrieker and the Walden Wailer in my list. So it rounds out the characters at a nice and healthy 953 points. Into my core, I've got a unit of 30 skeletons, full command, just as they come, shields and light armor. Happy days. And then a unit of 27 Graveguard, hands, weapons, shields with the Drakenhof banner for the 5-up regen. Makes a massive chunky unit in the middle of the board, which people can struggle to get rid of. And then I've got 2 units of 5 dire wolves with doom wolves in them, so they've got champions. I need to play around with the wolf layout ever so slightly. I think champions is the right thing to do. I think you just need slightly more than 5 in the unit. I think 7 or 8.
Sure.
Paired with the BSB means that the wolf unit can challenge a dragon, not die, and still be there for the dragon to fight it next turn, which I think is the shield I need for the Mortis engine. So I need to play around with that. So basically,
I think you'd need a minimum of 9, right? Because you can lose. You'll lose by 7. They'll do a wound, 6 overkill, and close order. So you need,
So
9.
obviously you take 1 off that because of the BSB. So
Sure.
you go down to 8, and you can get away with it. So and then just res them back up again. So yeah, I think if I play around with 8, that would be works. And then I have gone for 8 Blood Knights. These are kitted out to the max, other than drilled. They don't have drilled, but they've got the full plate armor. They've got the Castellan with the supernatural horror, which is the classic upgrade, makes them cause terror, and full command in there as well. So that's basically 400 points of unit there.
Nice.
Which it's your hammer. It's what you need to do the damage. So that's the list.
Good. All right. Well, the photos are not arrayed in a specific order, and by that I mean they're arrayed in the order that they downloaded from WhatsApp, because I wasn't given any specifics on how they should have been going, which is, fine. So I'm just going to click that. Do you think this is from game 1? Looks like it could be.
I have to wait for YouTube to load.
Terrible.
So hold, please, caller.
It's a picture of your whole army arrayed.
That is game 1.
Excellent news. It's probably in order then.
Cool board. Look at that mountain in the background. How amazing is that?
It's pretty cool.
That was like on all 4 corners. So it did make the board quite tight, but actually...
that works for undead.
Yes, I don't mind that.
Perfect. So what were you against game 1?
So this was Breakpoint, and it was versus a fine gentleman called Ollie and his Tomb Kings. And all 3 of my opponents, amazing all weekend. I had such a great game with all of them. I love tournaments for the fact that you can just have a laugh for someone random I've never met before for 3 hours, and it's all absolutely fine and natural. I love it. This was, full disclosure, this was Ollie's 4th game of Old World.
Okay.
So we played around a little bit with some options during the game, and I'm hoping. I mean, Ollie walked away saying he had a good game, so hopefully he did. But I think it's the sort of game where actually, if it is someone's 4th game of Old World and they're not quite sure what to do with all their units, it's doesn't make. What's the nicest way of saying this? I wasn't worried at any point during the game. Sure. I just needed to make sure I played my rules consistently and did everything I needed to do, and then I felt relatively comfortable. So, but Ollie played it well. He's got a great little list that I think he'll progress well nicely with. I think it's got the classic dragon layout in it with the armor of ages. You have to reroll wounds and stuff like that into it. It's got his level 4 caster, 2 big bricks of skeleton warriors, the big brick of archers, 2 tomb scorpions, the bone giant, which I've not seen before, which is really good fun. He was good.
Yep.
One of the sphinxy things, can't remember which one, and a unit of Necropolis Knights. I think that. Oh, there you go. Excellent. You can see it there. Look at that. So because of where the order in which Ollie deployed, I got the opportunity to set my Blood Knights up opposite to his Necropolis Knights and the Bone Giant. And because the board was quite squashed, he had them sort of behind each other, or sort of kind of like half. Yeah, you can sort of see them. Yeah, you've got Necropolis Knights with the Bone Giant next to it. But as you get into the middle, they get kind of squashed together. So we think when Ollie plays this again, I think he makes more use of ambush here, because I think the Scorpions can go into ambush.
Sure.
I think the Knights can as well. So that would have given him a little bit more maneuverability across the board. And you can see Ollie's put his dragon there behind the infantry unit. Keeping it safe and just generally hidden at the back. Ollie does get first turn, and he goes for a very ballsy long bomb charge with his Tomb Scorpions. They make the turn 1 charge. One of them makes the turn 1 charge, which I think is the key issue. If they'd have both made it in, it might have been slightly different. But yes, there we go. Turn 1, straight across the board, did their Vanguard move, moved and charged him. And unfortunately, the Graveguard they have static combat res of 7, so I think he
just
did
crumbles,
and then he just crumbled him.
Yeah.
So we learned about crumbling in that point there, and he does move the rest of his army up, obviously,
of course.
but by doing that, he actually moves the Necropolis Knights into range of the Blood Knights turn 1, because the Blood Knights have access to Van Hale's Dance Macabre, which can add D3 onto their movement, initiative, and weapon skill. So their charge range goes up to 19 inches. You can get the charge range up to when you're ranging a Mortis Engine. So that makes quite a lot of threat range there from that unit. So I thought I'd just go for it. I thought, sod it. It's at the higher end of my charge distance, and I made the charge. And unfortunately, Necropolis Knights, they don't have counter charge, and their initiative's quite low. And the Blood Knights also get off the initiative. Obviously, they have the initiative, so once they get into Necropolis Knights, they just rip them apart. Unfortunately, they don't have the armor to take the Blood Knight charge at AP2, and that allows the Blood Knights to overrun into the Giant. On that first turn, my Graveguard finish off the second Scorpion, that's obviously failed his charge and ended up quite close to the Graveguard at the end of that first turn. So quite a heavy set of losses on taking the first turn to lose both Scorpions and the Necropolis Knights straight off the bat. But he's nothing if not a ballsy gentleman, so he goes for more long bomb charges in the second turn.
Nice.
My Graveguard that had pushed up into the middle, he manages to get a max distance charge off with his skeletons to get a flank charge onto the Graveguard, which is combined with his dragon making a 19-inch charge across the board into the front of the Graveguard. So that starts to look a little bit hairy. He does try and get the War Sphinx in as well. Yeah, you can see it there, the dragon going straight in. The skeletons, they were just off to the side. They needed a max distance charge to get in, clip the corner of the Graveguard, and then do the close the door to finish off into the Graveguard. Just off the edge of the photo there, you can't quite see it, but it's the Sphinx thing. He does that. Would have been an easier charge than what the skeletons had to make, but he does fail that one, which actually means that although he gets big combat res from the flanking skeletons and obviously max overkill from the dragon, it's not enough to finish the whole Graveguard unit, which ultimately then leaves the Graveguard still locked in combat with the dragon and the skeletons, but still in plenty of range to be resurrected en masse. And obviously there's nothing more soul destroying to kill 22 Graveguards in one go and then have them all come back again.
That is pretty rough.
A big chunk of them come back.
Speaking from experience.
Indeed. And obviously without finishing the Graveguard, that means he is in a position where he's within range of all of my screams with his dragon. You can see my vortex in the center of the board there. So I get the screams off with the Banshee and the Mortis Engine. It doesn't quite kill the dragon, but it gets it down to like 1 wound at that point, which makes the ongoing combat incredibly challenging for Ole to have to deal with. It basically goes down in the next turn. After that, I can't remember whether the Graveguard finish it off with combat res or the Screams get it again. But
Sure.
It's enough at that point, basically, by turn 2, that he's lost the dragon, he's lost the Graveguards. Obviously, the Blood Knights have then gone in and killed the giant, overrun into a load of the skeletons. And then, I guess by turn 3, he's lost most of his skeletons, he's lost the dragon, he's lost all the Scorpions, he's lost the giant and the Necropolis. It just kind of spirals from there to a point. And those Blood Knights, over the course of the game, they eat Necropolis Knights, the giant, big unit skeleton archers, big unit skeleton spearmen, and Ollie's high priest. So they just eat their way across the back of his army.
Yeah.
And it finishes, the Graveguard managed to finish off those skeletons next to them, which puts it at I score 2,193 points to his 136 in the end. So make that a 20-0 victory if we do the differential scores.
Nice.
Ollie and I had a good chance to have a chat about what we do different next time. As I mentioned before, we would probably stick the Tomb Scorpions and the Necropolis Knights in ambush when we're on the tight board, because they probably pop up behind and start threatening things from behind, or just give him a little bit more space to maneuver. And clearly, I don't think we play quite as aggressively as is in this game. It was hilarious watching those because there was a moment where I was like, if they both make it, they're in a position where I can't move on my first turn because he's just locked everything down.
Sure.
So do I just send the Blood Knights off on their own, or do I try and make my way through it? Because I think if both Tomb Scorpions make it in, they probably do enough wounds that they don't then die to the crumbles. So, yeah, that could have been hairy. So I can see what he was going for, but it was ambitious, unfortunately. But it's a great game, lovely person to play against, and his army was absolutely stunning as well. Some amazing work, especially for a new player. It's really, really incredible work he got there. I think he got best painted overall. Or wooden spoon.
Yeah, Ian was saying that in chat. I'm assuming that the picture on stream is in fact Ollie, and I've not just got a picture of you.
No, that's Ian, who's my second game.
Oh, of course it is. Because I've played Ian.
You played him as well,
yeah. I was like, this man looks familiar, but he's not called Ollie. Maybe. It's obviously I've got face blindness. Nissan Creekhammer here. Good to see you both. We've had lots of people slagging you off for your choice of playing undead, which I think is fair, honestly. Can't argue with that. And also, my least favourite way of describing undead, which is wet undead versus dry undead. Grim. Absolutely grim. And also, yeah, I do want to point out, Rockin' the Chain, as Jordan says, you didn't choose the thug life, it chose you.
Oh, I'm not wearing it. I normally wear it.
It's the Saffron Walden Massive.
Essex, mate.
Perfect. So going into this event, I had told you that you had to win. I think
You literally said on the morning you have to win.
Yeah, I think the first message I sent you was it'd be cool if you won, and then on the day I think I was like, win.
Yeah.
just told you had to. So nice to see you doing as you're told. That's always appreciated.
Yeah.
So you've won your first game, 20-0, great start. It's exactly what you want to see. Normally, well, a lot of time when you go to events as a more experienced player, you'll find that you play against someone who is less experienced. Normally, the bigger the event, the more likely this is to happen as well. So going into it, it's quite nice just to get into the first game, have a lovely game with a nice opponent, where you also just don't have to think too hard, so you've got brain space for game number 2.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think I'm feeling like I'm near the point where with some of those games I can probably offer more support. I've not felt comfortable doing it up until now, but I think after this weekend I'm feeling enough of a grasp of the basics that actually if I am playing against a new player again, I feel more confident kind of helping them through. I'm starting to get a bit of an understanding of what the different armies do and things like that, and that's always been a key thing. So I'd like to think if I played Ollie again, I could make it a closer game just with giving him a hand throughout. And I mean, I keep saying he enjoyed it. He said I had a really good game, very much enjoyed it, and thinks he learned a lot. So that is a result. But it's one of these things you try and do. But again, sometimes with Old World's differential scoring does encourage you to try and if you're going to have more than one person go 3-0 or 5-0,
yeah. You got to smash.
You got to do that. So
there's no middle ground.
Give yourself a chance to win an event. So yeah. That's the pluses and minuses of differential scoring, which is it's a conversation for another day. But
so you had an opportunity for lunch, I'm sure. Anything exciting in the area, or was it just something pre-packed?
I am a total nerd, and I bring my own packed lunch most of the time. Payday is Thursday, so I was on a budget this weekend. The ticket was very reasonably priced, so that covered it. And I did treat myself to a veggie Whopper on the way home at Burger King. So that was my indulgence on the motorway services.
Had it done your way. Jordan says Lewis is a ham sandwiches man, which is incorrect.
I'm a vegetable, unfortunately.
Yeah, we, your mother and I have made the decision to turn. No, anyway, we'll go on. So you're into game 2, which was against obviously the lovely Ian, and
yes.
Especially now that I've seen these models, I do recognise them because I had to peel them off the board one by one myself not too long ago, in fact. So going into game 2, you had another undead versus undead matchup.
Indeed. This was wet undead versus wet undead.
God, why did I say that? Oh, yeah, go ahead. Go on.
Ian is another one of the Saffron boys, so he's from my club. So we obviously get on very well. We've we had an absolutely hilarious game, which was great fun as you do against your own club mates. So sometimes these things you're like, oh, I didn't want to travel all this way to play someone I could play every week, but actually Ian is enough of a gent that it was worth it in the end. So Ian's list, and this highlights some of the differences you can get with Vampire Counts, and why I think it's probably the most varied legacy faction we've got going, because it's similar to mine, but actually different. It operated differently as well. He had the big bricks of skeletons in the Graveguard like I did, and he had some Blood Knights, but a much smaller unit. He also had some Hex Wraiths in there for some Ethereal Cavalry, which is a unit I would like to play around with and I would like to try and get better with. But whilst it takes the slot of the Blood Knights, I struggle to find a world where you would want the Hex Wraiths over the Blood Knights.
Sure.
And I always like what Ian does as well, because he adds in like 3 or so level 1 casters to sit behind his infantry, so he can really kind of play that resurrecting game, where suddenly the skeletons you can just get loads of them back in one go. And he has that the single Ghoul King with the Sword of Kings that runs around, makes himself ethereal, and runs into something and just bops it with the Sword of Kings. So that's always quite good, which is freed up by, you get the points for all of those kind of extra casters and the Ghoul King by not taking the Mortis Engine. And Ian is very adamant that he prefers this to the Mortis Engine, and I'm very much on the fence. I'm on the side of the Mortis Engine being the best one. But as you can see from the photo on the screen, Ian deployed quite defensively all in one corner, which I think with hindsight is probably a mistake. And these are sort of games where you can, like, deployment is so important, because I had misdeployed myself, because you can see my Graveguard quite far out on the right hand side without too much support. So I was worried that I spread out too much. But that wood right in the middle, I didn't really want to be ending up playing through it right in front of those Blood Knights. So it was kind of just go round it or try and push through it.
Ian's gluing a Mortis Engine currently, just for
Is he?
the audio listeners. He's a convert by the sounds of things.
Yes, come over to the dark side, Ian. You want the extra movement, you want the extra casting, and you want the 18-inch command range. Just so good. But because Ian had put most of his stuff in that corner, that did give me quite a bit of width to play with. So you can see the Blood Knights on the far left there. They're right over the opposite side. They're miles away from his Blood Knights and his Hex Wraiths. I think obviously my Blood Knight unit is bigger, so it could probably take his Blood Knights or the Hex Wraiths. But I'm always very keen that's a 50-50 in that situation. If he gets the charge on me, then, and if he can position cleverly enough that I can't get the full distance on the counter charge, or however we work it, he gets Van Hales off and I don't, he ends up on higher initiative than me. And even though he's only got 5, there's enough there that they'll rip through half of my unit, and I lose that on combat res. So I don't want a one-on-one fight with my unit Blood Knights versus his, even though I've got the numerical advantage.
Sure.
So him putting them over in the corner like that allowed me to go on the opposite side and stare down some tasty infantry. And obviously because he's got so many characters and not that many kind of other units outside the characters, I was able to wait for where he put those Hex Wraiths before I put the Graveguard down. I knew the Graveguard could take a Hex Wraith charge and not a Blood Knight charge, because Hex Wraiths don't have first charge and they only have 1 attack each. So I'm happy on combat res on that front. I know I don't have any magic weapons, so I've got no way of hurting the Hex Wraiths, but combat res is sufficient.
Blood Knights have magical attacks, don't they?
Sorry?
Blood Knights, I'm pretty sure their hand weapons have
Graveguards don't, no.
Oh, sure.
So, I don't mind Blood Knights into Hex Wraiths on their own, not a problem at all.
I understand.
If I'm trying to commit the Blood Knights away from his Blood Knights, then I can't get both.
Sure.
And yes, I position particularly opposite. I get first turn, and this is me after my first turn of just tuning up the board as quickly as possible. Get myself in a position for a turn 2 Blood Knight charge, and I am able to move the dogs in that unit just to the edge of the woods. You can't see them; they're just hidden between the woods and the Mortis Engine.
Yeah,
right in front of the Blood Knights. So I'm kind of thinking wherever he puts the Blood Knights turn 1, I can just stick the dogs in the way. And buy me a turn so that once he finishes the dogs, he's then in scream range for the turn after. and can try and use that to take them down, because again, I don't have anything outside of my own Blood Knights that does the serious damage that's needed in combat to take down. So yeah, and obviously with where Ian is positioned, his Hex Race really had one option, that's to go straight forwards towards the Graveguard, which is a fight I am absolutely happy to take any day. So that didn't leave Ian many options turn one, so he just kind of shuffled forwards and gave me enough, again with the Van Helsdance Dance Macabre, to give me the extra inches of movement on the Blood Knights. Enough for the Blood Knights. I just went all in turn 2, basically, with the Blood Knights, straight into his skeletons. Moved the Graveguard right up into the faces of the Hex Wraiths. And I fill the kind of edge of the woods with the dogs right in front of his Blood Knights, so they don't have an option to charge anything else. Oh yeah, this is me after turn 1, and then you can see in the top left of that screen, you can see the dogs just on the edge of the woods there. That's before the Blood Knights, as the Blood Knights hit them. So the Blood Knights can't wheel out of the way of the dogs, so they have no choice but to charge them, which obviously burns through the first charge, which is what I want. So if he does charge my infantry, I've got my rank bonuses. But also means that when he overruns, or even if he holds, I can then scream him the turn after. And the Blood Knights absolutely mince the way through his skeletons and start to then threaten the kind of caster castle of Graveguard and lots of casters and Ghoul King and stuff behind. And Ian doesn't really have a choice, as I say, with those Blood Knights to hit the dogs, and he has to hit the Graveguard with the Hex Race, because there's nowhere else for them to go. They can't go backwards, they can't go sideways. So Graveguard beat the Hex Race on combat res. The Blood Knights obviously wipe through the dogs quite happily, but find themselves in the woods in front of the Mortis Engine and the 2 Banshees. And I am able on my turn to reform the Blood Knights and get into the flank of his Graveguard with all the casters and stuff in it. Unfortunately, the flank charge from the Blood Knights, I get off the Frenzy and Hatred, so the Blood Knights just rip through the Graveguard, just tear them to pieces. And my skeletons, in case the screams don't catch his Blood Knights, my skeletons are able to get into the flank of his Blood Knights. Yeah, you can see here the skeletons have moved into the woods effectively. They've done a flank charge on the Blood Knights, who've then been screamed and got rid of. And the Hex Wraiths, I'm only killing like 1 a turn, but I'm just out combat resing them by 1 or 2 each time. So I'm just pushing them back, res the Graveguard back up, push them back, and eventually that's it. The Graveguard dies to the Blood Knights. Most of his casters in that unit also die. His Blood Knights go down to the screams. The Hex Wraiths eventually crumble away. He does go, Ian then has his Ghoul King left, and he goes for an ambitious play to kill my Necromancer or Nightmare. So you can see, if you look in the top of the image, you've got the Ghoul King out on his own behind my Blood Knights. Then you've got a unit of my dogs just above the template, and behind those dogs is my Necromancer and Nightmare. And this is one of the issues with the Necromancer, who I tend to have following behind the Blood Knights, is that sometimes the Blood Knights, if they get a bit excited, they can just charge you off. And the Necromancer's just like, wait for me, guys, wait for me. Because he won't always be able to march or get the reserve move off. So can sometimes find himself out in the open. He tries to scream with his Banshee on the Necromancer, leaves it on 1 wound because of my ward save. And I am basically after that able to mop up on my turn. So I did lose 2 dog units overall. So I finished on 2,550 to Ian's 96. So we take that as...
That's such a rude way to phrase it. It's like, oh yeah, no, I lost two dog units.
The dogs die in all of them. They all just keep killing the dogs. I don't understand.
It's almost like you're putting them aggressively in front of their army.
Yes.
Who could see that, that coming? Okay, great. So you've had 2 undead matchups. You've come out on top of both. 20-0 on both of those, which is all good stuff. Jordan says, screams against Vampire Count's leadership sounds fun. That's not a great leadership on those.
No, it's not they design screams to kill other wet undead.
Stop talking. So, good stuff there. You're coming into round 3. How many players were there at this event?
18 at the event, so good number.
Okay, so at the end of game 2, there were theoretically 4?
4 of us.
Yeah.
Undefeated.
So by the end of game 3, you're looking at 2 players who could go 3-0. So you've got to really scrape the points if you're going for that undefeated run
Exactly.
at wing.
I think that's what it comes down to in the end. So there's me, obviously undefeated the Vampires. There's Gareth, who I play in the last round. He's got his Orcs and Goblins. He's undefeated. There's a Bretonian list that's undefeated, who's the gentleman, I can't remember his name. And then we've got Nicholas Boucher with his Bretonian.
Very nice.
Was it Bretonians? I can't remember. Nick will tell us in the chat. He's in the chat who his last opponent was. I can't remember. I think it was a Bretonia off in the last round against his game. So any one of those players, obviously, I'm most concerned about playing Nicholas because I haven't had the practice I want into Bretonians, and I think that matchup probably favours him because the Dukes can outmaneuver the Blood Knights, and they win that fight quite happily just because the Blood Knights can't refuse challenges. So they end up in a position where they just get run down. And he just got lots of Pegasus Knights all over the place. So it kind of deals with everything that I can throw at it, unless he does something stupid like charges the Graveguard in the front with his Pegasus Lord, and then I'm able to scream it. But he's got the maneuverability that he just doesn't have to do that. So why would you?
Sure.
So I'd very much concerned about that matchups. Nicholas was saying he was playing Mortuary Cult in the last round, so that was the last player who was also in.
You could have had a triple undead matchup. That would have been something.
Yeah, that would have definitely been quite something. I would have. I mean, there were a lot of undead. I think there were 4 Vampire Count players and 4 Tomb Kings players out of 18. So
almost
like half
half
the field was undead.
That's pretty wild. Perfect. All right, but you did end up into Orcs and Goblins, as you said, and I can see an Arachnarok Spider.
Hell yes.
Which is, I think, the most expensive model you can bring in the game, outside of maybe the Chaos Lord can get more expensive because it has more upgrades that you can stack on top of the base cost. But base cost wise, I think the Arachnarok level 4 is the most expensive model in the game.
Oh hell yeah. And just open battle this one. So nice and straightforward. Gareth is a player who's been playing fantasy for years and years and years. Played 6th, 7th, 8th edition. And he goes to quite a lot of the tournaments in America as well. So he tends to travel to LVO and Nova and stuff like that. So very experienced player. He had a really good start. So he finished some of his models. So the painting requirement was quite limited. And he finished some of his Orcs and Goblins. And the ones he finished look absolutely incredible. So I think once he finished the whole army, that's going to be a proper standout force. And yeah, so he has, as you say, he's got the Arachnarok Spider, which I love. He's got that big brick of 50 Night Goblins with the poison in it, filled with Fanatics, which is quite tasty. He had another second caster in there as well. So either the Arachnarok was level 3 and the one on foot was level 4, whichever way around it was, I can't remember.
Sure.
He's also got some of the random movement stuff in there as well, which always presents an interesting challenge because he's got the Squig Hoppers and the big Mangler Squig. He's got a tasty unit of Trolls in there and a big unit of Savage Orcs as well. So it's quite a mixture. I know. So like Nicholas, who's was playing Bretonians this time, but he runs his Night Goblins. He ran them at the last Saffron event, and he just ran loads of big blocks of them. Yeah. Gareth had gone for a load of the random movement stuff, which is really challenging to play against from my perspective because I'm relatively confident of the distances. Like I can normally outrange something on the charge of the Blood Knights, but I also don't want to risk a massively long charge because if I fail it, I'll end up just stood in the open with my willy in the air. So, but with those random movers, you just have no idea. You've got no idea of how close they're going to get to you or what they're going to roll. So I ended up going sort of 14 inches away with the Blood Knights in the first turn, which almost costs me the game. But I get first turn. I move the Blood Knights up around the left flank towards that Mangler Squig, the big yellow one.
Yep.
And just push up into the centre of the infantry. I keep them. I'm never sure what to do against these big Goblin bricks because you get 50 shots. So on average, that's only like 3 wounds to the Mortis Engine. But there's a chance you roll a few 6s on that poison and you could spike massively. And then with Travel Mistal Pathways, which was unrestricted in this comp, so its front can move to back, if you know what I mean. Like you can move massive distance with it.
Sure.
I kept the Mortis Engine basically on my back line, still within 18 inches of the infantry, but basically right at the back, to avoid the risk of that turn 1, Travel Mistal Pathways and Dead Mortis Engine. But I always feel less comfortable having fewer screams and having the Mortis only have to keep up.
Yeah.
So Gareth obviously pushed into the centre with most of his stuff, and as I say, I'd stayed 14 inches away from his Mangler Squig, and its random movement rolls 13. I was like, whoa! If it rolled one more, he would have just hit the Blood Knights. And obviously, it doesn't count as charging.
No.
So, well, it counts as charging, but it's not declaring a charge, so I don't get to use counter charge. So, he probably out initiatives me. And then I lose a lot of Blood Knights to that Mangler Squig turn 1.
Yes.
But obviously, because it couldn't quite make the charge in,
yeah.
Gareth elects to move the Mangler Squig in such a way so that it's the opposite side of a forest to the Blood Knight, so I can't see it to hit it turn 1. This is my big brain play, which I'm going to come on to next. But he does move the trolls forwards. And again, it's quite similar, is that he puts them right on the edge of my charge distance. But I have Van Hales, which can adds D3 to my movement. So it just makes that charge slightly more likely.
Sure.
So I managed to set up the big brain play where I charged the Blood Knights into the trolls with Van Hale's extra movement. I charged the wolves into the front of the Mangler Squig. So if you go back to the previous photo, you'll see where the Mangler Squig is. But effectively, the wolves then hit the front of it. And then I moved my Graveguard into his Squig Hoppers, the yellow ones you can see in this current photo. Back again, yeah. But the Mangler Squig moves forwards, the wolves charge in the front of it, which obviously normally think that's a really stupid idea because the wolves just die immediately. But with the way the trolls are positioned, I'm able to use the Blood Knights to kill the trolls.
Yeah.
Overrun into the Mangler Squig, and because the wolves are in the front, it's an ongoing combat. So I'm able to then fight again with the Blood Knights, kill the Mangler Squig, and then I overrun again into the Squig Hoppers. Now, I'm pretty sure you can't fight a third time. So
you can't overrun a second time.
Oh, can you not?
No. Oh, court!
Uh-oh. Why couldn't you overrun?
Police? Hello? I'd like to report a crime!
I thought that was a big brain play there. Well, I got 2 fights off anyway. I didn't fight a third time. So
no, I feel like that was a combat you'd have won anyway between Graveguard and Wolves, given that you got the charge into the Squig Hoppers, right?
Yes, Graveguard and Squig Hoppers. I mean, Graveguard, I think, rip all but 2 of them apart. I think is the play. So I don't think it makes much odds.
Nick's feeling cheated. He wants his first place medal. Yep. Disgraceful behaviour. This is why I don't let you go out on your own.
Oh, for goodness sake, leave me alone. I mean, the Blood Knights would have been, an inch back? Well, how thick's a Mangler Squig's base? But yeah, so... it felt good at the time.
Ginger Steve says, same old Lewis, tut, tut, tut. He hears that you cheated at Guess Who too. Oh, no. I mean, I think prison is the only solution for this.
I want a rules query on that.
You don't want a rules query on that. Anyway, so yes, as you point out, you haven't actually moved very far, and you would have won the combat anyway. So it's probably not actually a big.
I don't think it changes anything.
No, you didn't overrun a 4th time, did you?
I didn't overrun a 4th time, no.
Good,
because,
that would have probably made a big difference.
The Squig Hoppers stayed where they were, so.
Sure.
And to be honest, actually, what it did cost me is the ability to countercharge the charge from the Savage Orcs. So actually, if I hadn't overrun, I could have used countercharge.
You can't countercharge infantry. Oh, you've been trying to cheat again.
Cheating again. Well, clearly I didn't get to cheat that second time. So either way, I would have cheated.
Oh no, I've turned off the voice, Callum, so it's not going to read the super chat there. But thank you very much. I the Dreech deed with the scaling queens for good. Dees me head and you can, given that we haven't got the text to speech to read it there.
I was going to say you need to translate that into English because I haven't got a clue what that means.
Well, yes. Moving on.
Yeah, no idea.
So.
But yeah, so I think really at that point it feels like Gareth's lost a lot. He's lost the Trolls, he's lost the Mangler Squig and one of the units of Squig Hoppers. But actually most of his damage dealers are still standing. So the Goblins are still there, all the Fanatics are still there, all his casters are still flying around. There's one of the big units of the Squig Hogs still in the game, Savage Orcs are still there. So it's like I've done some damage, but actually that has committed the Blood Knights. They're now in the middle of his army, a few inches further forward than they should have been, with a position of out of support. So the obviously the caster's miles back, and they need to effectively survive a turn of 3 fanatics and the charge from the Savage Orcs, and the ongoing combat that they're in with the Squig Hoppers illegally. So you should have just been fighting the Savage Orcs and not Squig Hoppers as well.
Yeah. Which would have been better for you, even without the countercharge that you'd have tried to have done illegally, you bastard.
Yeah.
But if you had a better frontage, you'd have had a lot more attacks with your hand weapons going in.
Yes, and it would have been 3 or 4 inches further away from the fanatics as well. So there's a chance.
Oh.
Actually, what I've done is throw my Blood Knights into the fanatics, which is never a good thing to do. But I think this is probably where Gareth makes the mistake that costs him the game, because he releases the fanatics into the Blood Knights. So obviously, where I have illegally overrun, I'm right next to the Goblin unit, so the fanatics can come straight out and hit me. He releases all 3 of them, but actually he only puts 2 of them into the Blood Knights. He uses the 3rd for the Graveguard unit.
Right.
And one of the fanatics that's aiming for the Blood Knights only rolled 3, so doesn't hit the Blood. It just ends up right in front of them.
Yeah.
Which actually means only 1 fanatic goes through the Blood Knight unit. It kills like 3 or 4 of them, as they often do, because that AP3 is horrific. But actually, we end up in a situation if he did just put all 3 fanatics through the Blood Knights die.
Right. Yes.
And then I'm questioning the trade I've made there. So probably points wise, it's evened out. The Mangler Squig plus the Trolls. Ginger Steve, I have DM'd you. It's in your Discord DMs. You'd be more than welcome. But obviously I then get lucky because only half the Blood Knights die to the Fanatics. So if he had put all 3 in, I think he kills the Blood Knights, and then I think he's in a much stronger position in the game there. Because as it is, the remaining Squig Hoppers and the Savage Orcs don't finish off the Blood Knight unit that turn. So I think I end up with 3 left. So 3 or 4 left. And then, which allows them to strike back and at least finish off the Squig Hogs that turn, and then be in a position to be rezzed up the following turn. So they go back to effectively full strength straight after.
Hate that for you.
Yes, I mean it's one of these things where hindsight's a wonderful thing. Is that if you know your second fanatic's not going to make the Blood Knights, you put all 3 in. But there we go. It's worked out how it works out. He does kill a load of Graveguard, but that's it. So the Blood Knights are able to, over the next 2 turns, I think, mop up the Savage Orcs and the Squig Hogs. Then hit his caster and his big block of goblins, who have been dutifully putting shots into the Mortis engine but not killed it. And effectively on the other side of the board, my big unit of skeletons is facing down the Arachnarok and the Squig Hoppers on their own. The Squig Hoppers hitting the skeletons kills like 26 out of 30 of them, something like that. I think I've got like 5 or 6 left. But obviously, again, if you don't kill the whole unit, it starts to come back, which is what it did, and allowed me to trap the Squig Hogs in combat and scream them to death with the Banshees because they don't have very good leadership. And then effectively challenge lock the Arachnarok whilst the Blood Knight situation resolving itself over the opposite side of the board. My dogs get their first kill of the weekend as well. They kill off a unit of Spider Riders.
Very nice.
Thing that's worse than the dogs in combat is the Spider Riders.
No, they've got 2 attacks each, and they've got poison.
Yes, but the dogs charging them are faster with strength 4, so they don't have any armor. So they do get ripped apart, which basically means we're in a position by the end of the game where Gareth doesn't have anything left, and
Ian Beale.
Yes, I haven't taken any casualties either.
That is brutal. That is absolutely brutal. Well, good stuff. And it sounds like your cheating was both accidental and not too impactful. Here we've got some other shots of the game. I think,
if anything, the cheating gave me an opportunity to lose that game. So next time.
As you point out, would have been further away from the Fanatics as well, which would have been ideal. But good stuff. Congratulations on winning your first solo event. Let out of the house. Shan't happen again. I'll make sure to come to. Not that you play your own Saffron Slams, but I'll make sure that I'm there to prevent you from having any chance of winning. Altruistically.
would once you've all bought your tickets to the Saffron Slam in May, do buy a ticket to Danny's Gothic Games events. I think next one he's going to do is July or August.
Nice.
August. He said. I
Is
don't
that
think
going
they're
to
up on
be?
BCP yet, but
Is that going to
keep
be
an
an
eye on the Gothic
RTT?
game. I think he didn't say either way, so it could be a GT, it could be an RTT.
Could be.
But he's got a great group of local guys to go to a lot of his events as well. So they're always there, and they're really lovely to chat to. I spent all day in the breaks chatting away to people, and actually met a couple of guys from Cambridge as well who'd driven down as well. So they're running an escalation league at the 2D6 Lodge Club in Cambridge. So we're going to sort them out. Hopefully they'll be at 2,000 points by September. So going to do them some discounted tickets for Saffron in September with a little mini prize for their little league that they've done, and do some prizes and trophies for their league players. So look forward to that as well. But you only meet those people when you go to events, so it was good to meet someone.
Very nice. Ian says July confirmed, so keep that in mind if you're looking for events in the south. But yeah, no, very nice. Congratulations again. And we do have a good fistful of podcast questions. If you want to support, it's been a while since I've done a proper plug, but if you do want to support the channel, you can become a channel member. And if you're at the Longbeard or Grand Knight tier supporter, all of the VIP sections on Discord are open to you. There is the chat where, frankly, it's been unhinged recently, but also there is the close order podcast questions. So if you have any burning desires that you want to ask, you're welcome to ask them in there. We'll start off. We've got a question from Winslow. Question number 1: of all the comp/scenario systems you've seen at the Old World events so far, what's been your favourite and or inspired you to use something similar in your own events? So this is more of a question for you.
Yes, I am definitely, because I'm a filthy 40k player up until recently, I probably have more faith in Games Workshop balancing and maintaining their community than perhaps people that experienced the end times and haven't necessarily gone into 40k since then, when Games Workshop have had their kind of renaissance of community engagement. So I very much sit on the world of keeping comp limited, especially when it comes to army construction, that sort of thing. Things that I have done seem to be the things that everybody's doing, which is restricting allies and keeping to the rule of 3/rule of 6 for core.
Yeah,
I haven't gone beyond that. I like the 500 point max, and I like the single level 4, but because the events I run are designed to try and be a little bit more relaxed, and therefore tend to be not attended by some of the potential members of the community that might take things a little bit too seriously. Not that there's many of them, it very rarely happens, but I seem to get people not self-comping, but you know what I mean? They take something that they want to take rather than something that the meta says that they should take to a lot of events. And then you get a little contingent of people that are there to practice for international play and that sort of stuff, who will just filter themselves out to the top of the event over the first couple of games. So you tend to, hopefully, if the majority of your players are coming in with the right mindset, actually, I don't think you need to comp that much, as long as people are having a good time. And that's the key, making sure your opponent has a good time, regardless of how much you're winning, how many dragons you've got, all that sort of stuff. I can't speak for Ian, I can't speak for Ollie, and I can't speak for Gareth, but they all told me they had a good time, even though actually the games ended up being quite one-sided at the weekend. So
they told me they hated it.
Well, they could well have done. That's vampires be doing that sometimes. But ultimately, if I've played with the right attitude and I can ask my players to play the right attitude, you don't need to comp things too much. It's actually, the game's just a really good laugh. So get stuck in it.
Perfect. His second question was, for the WTC, has there been historically a team to beat? Do you think that's different for the Old World, given how different the community is compared to previous Fantasy WTC events? I actually don't really know much about international play in previous editions. Obviously, I stopped playing Fantasy probably around 2012, something like that, and I wasn't plugged into the competitive scene in any of the games that I played at that point, and I don't really know. I haven't really bothered to look at past winners. I guess the Ninth Age community is probably the closest we have to that, so maybe that's something I should look into. Some off-the-cuff answers. Poland usually have a pretty good read on metas and are innovative. They bring good lists, just whichever Warhammer game you're playing. Australia as well has typically been pretty good, although I'm not sure they've got the level of engagement that they need to send a team this year. And if we look at other games, Denmark in Age of Sigmar have done really well. Now, I don't know if that is a Danish thing or if that's just that they really love Age of Sigmar, but Denmark's won 3 of the last 4 years in Age of Sigmar. So,
nice.
yeah, so whether that's just that they are pretty dominant in the sort of fantasy space, or maybe it's an Age of Sigmar specific thing, I can't say that I've seen many Danish tournament results. I don't typically actively look at events that go as they go on. I sort of keep an overview, but I haven't seen anything that's super wowed me from Scandinavia. Nothing. Not that they don't play games, but nothing's like massively caught my eye.
And I think we've not yet seen enough teams events in general going on to, I think, have a really good idea of what a good team composition looks like. I mean, we know what the best armies are and just take those and hopefully you do all right. But I think there's still a lot of data to be gathered, which probably the WTC this year will be a really good chance to see as to what makes a good team. What armies do you need? Is there space for legacy factions in there? Is there just space for really good singles players? How are we going? And we know that some teams, I was speaking to Nicholas, who is French, they haven't picked their team yet. They're not going to pick their team till June time.
Which is wild to me.
Which is a while, quite close to the event. So in a situation where we've got a team of French killers that none of us know yet. And I know, like, take Nicholas this weekend, he had a much harder string of games than I did in terms of the factions he was playing against. So clearly a very, very good player who deserves to be on the podium on a lot of events. So if the French take him on, I know that there'll be people who currently have to play against him in England that'll be like, they're going to do well if the rest of the team is up to that caliber. So it's tricky.
Perfect. Ian says, shameless plug for the Saffron Slam Teams event in November. Commission in the post, please. Very good, Ian. Thank you very much for that.
We're trying our first Teams event in November, I think, which will be good luck. Just a small... I'm not opening up to the massive room yet. I'd like to at some point. I'd like to go up to 50 players and have 10 teams of 5. I think that'd be really, really cool. Makes such an amazing atmosphere. The 40k Teams events are the best events that I run, and everyone comes back saying that they've had such a good time. And actually, if I could kind of bottle that energy and just have it all day, it would just make life amazing. But I think we do something similar for fantasy, slightly smaller scale to start with, and then see actually if there's enough people that want to do it, we'll scale it up.
Sounds good. There was a follow-on to that. Have you ever seen something like Swedish Comp for the Old World, and what are your thoughts on the idea of it? Hate comp. Fucking hate it. It's such a terrible idea. Like, I don't trust the people to come up with it doing it right. And there needs to be full-on support for it. There will not be full-on support for it. So if you've seen the XKCD, where it's like, oh, there's 15 competing international standards for this. We need to have one standard, so they invent a new one. And now we've got 16 competing international standards. And Games Workshop is actively supporting the game. We're going to have, rules dropped in the not-too-distant future. Not soon, but, there'll be things coming in the future. I don't think we need comp for a game that is actively being supported.
I think the issue is if you are a new player trying to come into the hobby, go to your first event, it's already quite an overwhelming experience to put together 2,000 points and put yourself out there and go and meet people you've never met before, go to a place you've never been to before, whether you're on your own or you've got mates with you, and remember all of your rules and try not to make too many mistakes, try not to cheat and overrun 3 times, all that sort of stuff that as a new player you're really conscious of until you relax into the community. And to add a layer of, you can't take that unit, or you have to take that unit, or actually we're going to use these rules today, you've got to find this random PDF on the internet.
Lewis, what have you gone and left for, you muppet? It's fine. Whatever he was saying probably wasn't that important. I'll add him back in when he rejoins.
Oh, hello.
And then he's back, yeah. No, I think you were finished, mate.
Yes, I think so. But yeah, it makes it very difficult for new players to follow what the hell's going on.
Yes, it's exclusionary. It makes the barrier to entry harder. It's not a positive for the game. I actively think if we are at a state where the game needs comp, then the game is dying, and that would concern me. So I'm at this state right now, anti-comp. In 2 years' time, if the game hasn't changed and the game isn't being actively supported, yeah, I think there probably would be comp needed. But keep in mind we're a year and a month in, something like that. It's the smoothest release of any edition of Fantasy, to my knowledge. 1 year in, I don't think any version of Fantasy has been this good 1 year in. If you're looking back at like 8th edition, which was streamlined and slicked back, that was years and years and years of iteration. So I think we've got plenty of time to get it right.
Yeah. Although I guess, I mean, it is, we're being critical, but it is people that are very keen and very passionate, trying to push things faster and further, which is always good to see. But it's I think, and we're in a position already where we've got 5 or 6 different comps. I was speaking to Danny from the Gothic Games one, and he just wasn't sure what type of comp to put in his pack. So if those of us that are trying to run events don't know what type of comp people are happy with, or what to expect, or what to put in, what does that mean for the community? Let alone individuals who are new, who aren't even part of the community yet.
But stuff like missions, I think, is a good way to do things. And I'll be honest, running like wacky missions where you completely change the scoring, I might not end up going to that event. That might put me off from going to it, traveling, committing money to it. But that's probably more the wheelhouse of what TOs should be looking at if they want to be playing with more specific, rules. If you want to go, put some objective focus in, see if that changes the game, makes infantry a little bit better, yada yada. There's a lot of stuff that you can do. And while I'm not necessarily someone who would prefer to play that, I think it's entirely reasonable for a TO to change the game through missions. That feels very reasonable, as opposed to changing the base game.
We're setting up a Rick.
All right. Have a word with yourself, Lewis. I'm going to continue on. Jordan says, comp's normally bollocks. It normally does nothing to address the best 3 factions. Yeah, I mean, there's, unless you get to like 6 or 7 layers deep, you usually find that you can play around the comp. There's just the thing that's the best in that. And that's not to say that taking, a bit off the top and a bit, and like making the top level bit worse and the bottom level bit better is fine. But like the comp that I've seen, like German comp is one of the ones that flies around. You've got, I think it's max 7 flyers, and the Falcon Horn counts as 1. Cool. I'll just run, a unit of 5 flyers with 5 peg knights with 1 tooled up character and the Falcon Horn, or two tooled up characters. Doesn't really change how I want to play my game. Maybe I'm more pushed into exiles, and maybe I go full war machines. Oh no, that army is different, but still, not noticeably comped. Whereas things like limiting other armies that are having more difficulty than Bretonians it's gonna make their life harder. Cool. So, Jordan said, what do you think the ideal state of the old world is? Is its current state a heavy infantry thing? And what do you find about the game? What about the game do you find fun? I love dragons. I really enjoy playing dragons. I don't think they're necessarily good for the game in the state they're in. I'd much rather we had more infantry. So I'd like to see more infantry, but monsters still be playable. I'd like to just see infantry. Basically, what I want is for infantry to be the default. And if you brainlessly charge the front of a block of infantry with a dragon or cavalry, you don't necessarily win. But if you use your superior stats, your movement, your fly, all of that good stuff, if you use that to get into a good position, you should crush the unit that you charge. And that you should be rewarded for playing well. So I'd like to see infantry win on default, but if you play smart with your mobile threats, I want those to do well. That's what I'd love to see out of the old world.
Yep, I can agree with that.
Excellent. You've been scared off from going on long tangents because you might disappear.
I might disappear at any moment.
Absolutely.
I think you've always got to keep asking yourself, are you enjoying yourself playing the game? And
don't enjoy yourself playing the game. Do that in the comfort of your own home. When you're out in public, there are rules.
Jesus Christ, man.
You said it.
But yeah, if you can get to the end of an event or the end of a game, club night, whatever it happens to be, and you look back on it and go, I had a really good time,
yeah,
then great. And that comes from a number of different things. That comes from communication with your opponent. If you want to play infantry, don't play infantry. Or you go to an event and, okay, your first game, you might play against enemy dragons and you'll learn a lot. And then you'll just get stratified through the pairings processes anyway. So you'll find your level and you'll find the people that you vibe with and have a really great time. And that, to me, is more important than the actual rules. And sometimes when you go to events, it's actually the people that you're talking to are more important than the games you're playing. Like, you could just go and not even think about the game for 3 games and actually just chat away to the people that are around you, and you still have an amazing weekend. So if the game is facilitating that, I think we're in a good place.
Yeah, absolutely. Ian said we'd added 1 rank to infantry combat res, just balance up infantry issues. I think +1 to infantry combat res, -1 to monster combat res goes a long way to smoothing things out.
It forces you to have to do the flank stuff you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then it's not just undead that can stand there and take the charge.
Yeah, I mean, some armies can do it. You just need to get a combat res of 7. That's the thing. Shout out to Existence UK, who is Twitch moderator of my channel, banning someone who I'm assuming was a bot. So thank you for that, but I didn't catch the message, but appreciate that. I'm going to do some more Twitch. I know I was talking about getting people following Twitch. I am going to start trying to do some Twitch streams, I think, where I look through some stuff and then use that to filter through to YouTube videos, but I haven't quite worked out what I want to do with that. Alrighty then. Steve says, I just love playing. It's so much fun just pushing models around and making new friends at events. I think most people who play the game, like actively play the game, just like enjoy playing it and don't necessarily want comp. That's a generalization. I know some people who play a lot who do want to solve comp, but yeah. Okay, what else we got next? Ed says, if a tomato is a fruit, does that make ketchup a smoothie? My level of knowledge on this subject is equal to the level of care I have about it. You got an answer for that one, bud?
I have no answer to that. I didn't even know what thought process goes. Do you not have a job?
No, he said, I'm at a work thing. Please help flag my question. Wanted to make sure it was seen. There was a question from Goldfire that I'm not going to read. And then Callum says, alrighty, only been paying half attention to what's been winning events recently. Going to exclude events that are self-comping, doing what they want for other reasons. Question inspired by a lack of presence of the Warpfire Dragon in general, despite, as you know, it being very good. It seems the general perceived meta seems to be moving towards more combo-heavy armies that are reliant on getting certain conditions and a general disdain for large targets, etc. But looking at what's actually been winning most events, it looks like more straightforward armies are being the most consistent. Are people overthinking the game / meta at the moment? So there's a lot of sort of answers that go into that, and that's probably a whole video on its own, but we can answer it here. So first of all, I think people are getting better at playing the dragon armies, which means that the things that are good against them aren't as good against them because the dragon players have more scope to play. Also, combo armies, I guess you're kind of referring to like poison shooting armies where you teleport around the board. They have a lot of failure pieces. In a vacuum, those things are fantastic at beating dragon armies. However, if anything goes wrong, which it probably will over the course of the event, if you played like 5 hard matchups into 5 armies that you are favoured into, so dragon matchups, in one of those 5 games, something probably goes wrong in one of them. Like you fail to kill the dragon as it comes in, or you whiff a spell, or you miscast and you don't get a cast your entire phase, and it's suddenly at that point you're like, oh no, now I'm in a losing state. And I think it's very difficult for those armies to win consistently across events, while I think they're better at winning overall. And I think for something like teams, they're on unbelievable level of strength. I love them for teams. I think they're not as good for singles because that failure level built in, and I'll let you talk in a second, they're also harder to play. So if you're playing 5 games, for example, by game 5 or game 3, your army has required more moving parts to get the same result. So you've got to get more things correct. You've got to get your positioning very precise. You've got to make sure your ranges are good. You've got to make a lot of micro decisions, and that's quite taxing. And we see this in 40k, where I've come from, where I've got the most experience. You'll see very good armies that have low player bases, and also not necessarily winning tournaments, because if there's an army that's going to give you a similar result, even if it's slightly less good at winning events, if you play it perfectly, the top players are just going to play the thing that's slightly less good but is way less brain drained, because they can just consistently win out on muscle memory, and then in the sort of like 2 games that they've got to play against very good players, they can use their tools more effectively, because they're not thinking about how to use their tools, they're just thinking about how to beat the other person.
Definitely. I want to pick up on your consistency point there, because I think that's a reason Undead do quite well. But the main thing I want to get at in response to that question is, I think there's a massive difference between what I'm going to call Facebook Hammer, which is a slightly negative version of Theory Hammer, and actually playing the game.
Sure.
It's easy to rant on Facebook about how you can take a block of 100 poison.
Lord, they do it.
They love it. They certainly you love a shouting match on Facebook. Bloody hell.
Oh, yeah.
And actually, you do wonder how many games some of these individuals have played with that particular list, or with that particular most disgusting combo they could ever think of. And actually, has it actually worked? Have they actually been able to drop that on someone and make it function? Because take the Travel Mystical Pathways one that I played in the final games of Gareth. So I knew that if I just left my Mortis engine on the back of the board, there's no way he'd be able to travel Mystical Pathways any near it for the entire game.
Sure.
Okay, so that whole block can't do anything other than shoot skeletons for the whole game and throw some fanatics at me. So on Facebook, you would think, oh, I'll just teleport over and I'll kill the Mortis engine in 2 turns and that's it, you lose the game. But in reality, there's no way that Gareth can make that combo work because of the way I've positioned everything. So he can't drop the units close enough, or he can maybe get 2 ranks of the unit to shoot at once, which does 1 wound or whatever. So
yeah,
it just can't. It just doesn't work. So if you play the game like you, when you play it by Facebook, it's all horrible and it's all going to be a disaster. But if you actually go and play it on the tabletop, you'll have a really good time. But consistency, this is the point you mentioned at the end there. I think it's probably a reason we see Undead do quite well, whether it's wet or dry, because those armies take some of the randomness out of the game through their mechanics around being unstable or being immune to psychology, not subject to panic or fear or anything like that.
Yeah.
And mean that I know that when my skeleton block gets charged by a dragon, I know exactly how many wounds it's going to do. So I can plan for that. So I know I've got 30. He is going to do 8 wounds worth to my skeleton block if you charge him in the front, or 9 if you charge him in the flank, etc.
Yeah.
So I can plan for that. And I know, okay, well, 9 skeletons, that's not a problem. I can res half of them up on my turn just with 1 caster, get the champion back and do it again. So I can plan for that. And actually, as you say, it takes some of the decision points away from me, because I'm not going to end up in a situation where my 300-point unit has accidentally run off the board or hasn't quite done as much damage as it wanted to and therefore has got overrun into, or something like that. All those different randomness, you can take it out with Undead.
Yeah.
Which makes it easy for good players to predict what's going to happen and therefore plan their turns ahead and plan how they're going to win. It also makes it easier for new players to get into, because they can be confident their army's not just going to abandon them at the most inconvenient time.
Yeah, that's fair. Like, the reliability is really strong, and there's also a lot more reliability, or a lot less reliability in Old World than the games that we're used to playing. So it's interesting that we've both gravitated towards reliability. Me and Dragons, which is, the stomps add a real level of reliability, and the defensive stats add reliability, and then you with Undead.
It's a massive part of 40k. So anyone that plays 40k competitively knows you need to build an army that can reliably score your secondary cards, either get to certain points on the board, can reliably sit on your discs, and can reliably dish out damage either at combat or melee, or shooting or melee. So I'm used to thinking about my army, and everything that goes into it has a particular role. And when I do that, I need to know that that unit is going to perform that role.
Sure.
Because that's what I factored in. So if it doesn't perform that role, then my plan goes out the window. And I'm not at the point where I can plan 5 turns ahead yet, but I'm at a point where I can roughly imagine how the game might progress, which combats I want to get into, which ones I want to avoid. But the reason I can do that is because I know exactly how my unit's going to perform.
Yeah.
And I think actually taking away from the undead, if once I get into a position where I feel more comfortable moving on to non-undead army, that's obviously going to be a whole new level of complexity for me as a 40k player and turned into an old world player to come into and try and make the most of. Because you just have to accept there's going to be some more risk in what you're doing.
Yeah.
And obviously, again, with the undead, it's so forgiving if you fuck it up. Like I lose too many blood knights, I can just bring them back. So
I'll dedicate
you
this
get
month's
an
sub
extra
to
shot at
Undead
something.
Lewis.
Thank you, Tina Man. Tina Man dedicated this month's sub to Undead. Look, they needed the help. They were really struggling. Fantastic stuff. Exported Champion says, what's the main thing you need to have an answer for when making a list for a GT, and what are the indicators that your list can deal with it? I think exclude dragons from this, as a lot of players play avoidance and might not have big answers in the list. So, no, avoidance is one of the answers. So if you're playing, you have to factor in being able to play against a dragon, because if you can't play against a dragon, you're just going to lose 2 or 3 of your games on the bounce. So avoidance is the answer. You don't have to have like a 1-to-1, this can kill this. And this is not to say that you're thinking this way, but if, as a player, if you think the only way you can deal with things is by killing them, you need to look outside of that very narrow box. Avoiding something is an answer. So like for me, when I'm playing, I've moved to a 1 dragon, 1 griffin list. I have Arcane Urgency in my lists. My dragon is decent. It probably could kill, another dragon over 3 or 4, 5 rounds of combat. I've got a weapon skill 7 dragon. Not that massively matters into other dragons, but I've got triple saves, yada yada. I've got support that I can put into it with the griffin for the combat res. But that's a real waste. So my plan for other dragons is usually just don't get charged by it. It's a really good plan. Like, I play avoidance with my dragon, Ginger Steve says.
I will dedicate this month's sub to Guess Who and all the people who used it to make future style decisions.
I will dedicate this month's sub to Guess Who and all the people who used it to make future style decisions.
Appreciate that. Thank you so much. I'm not sure if it was a style decision or a decision that was forced upon him.
Unfortunately, yeah. I mean, decision's a strong word when this is what I wake up like.
I don't know. I have seen, there was a streamer recently who had his head entirely shaved. Maybe that's what you decided.
Yeah, you could do that, Ed.
No, I'm all right. Funnily enough, I do shave my head entirely every 3 or 4 years, but usually there's some sort of accompanying just dissatisfaction in my life. I don't want to say it's a mental breakdown, but it's normally just a case of this is one thing too many for me to deal with. I'm just going to get rid of all my hair and then jobs are good. Funnily enough, the last time that happened was when I was in lockdown. So make of that as you will. But yeah, so things that you need to be able to avoid. So you need to have a game plan for how you're going to deal with it. And it doesn't necessarily have to be models that you change, but you have to think about how you're going to factor in. You need to be able to deal with high magic armies, so something like Mortuary Cult. So anyone that's going to look to debuff your leadership and then hit you with screams or terror or being able to, what's the other thing? The caskets of souls, if they hit you when you're debuffed leadership wise, that really sucks. You need to have plans for dealing with just general shooting, so sort of like dwarf shooting, war machines. You need to think about how you're going to deal with melee armies, whether that's probably going to be like a cavalry army. If you're using cavalry, how are you going to deal with their army if they have countercharge and you don't? You're thinking in how do I feel about silver helms? Well, silver helms are pretty decent because they're a core choice, but they don't have countercharge. So if I'm playing against someone who does have countercharge, what's my game plan going into this? It's a lot of just sort of like, you've got to think through how you're going to play things, and you don't necessarily have to choose different models. You might just have to use them differently.
And I mentioned it already earlier on the previous question, but thinking about when you're putting a unit into your army, think about what it's actually there to achieve. What is it trying to do? And if someone comes up to you and says, oh, why have you taken this unit? Have you got a good answer to that question? I mean, the answer might be because it looks really cool, and that's absolutely fine. Not a problem at all. But if you're trying to play at a higher level, I think looking back on those unit choices and being able to justify exactly why it's there and looking for units that can do multiple things. So if a unit can perform 2 roles, perform them well, then that's obviously got some advantages. And I think what I found with the vampires, at least, this might just be very specific to vampires, is I need 2 sources of damage. I need a high impact combat source of damage, which is the role the Blood Knights perform. But I also need some form of range damage output to be able to pick things off, or to be able to do some chip damage over the course of a turn or two. And that's where the screams come in. Sure. Because, okay, they're only 8-inch range, so they're not massive range, but you've got things like reserve moves and ethereal, whatever the spectral steed is thing, that you can move things forward and jump them back and stuff like that. So it allows me to project a bit of threat and actually get to the position where what I was doing at the start of the game, which was having loads of skeletons and then not being able to get anything and just being ground down over the course of the game, I found that I needed that second source of damage, because, and you end up in a situation where you've got a bit of redundancy as well. So just thinking about what each unit is there to perform and making sure you've got enough tools to do the jobs you need to do.
Nice. Last question we've got here is from Jordan again, and Jordan says, what rules do you perceive to be issues for the game, like fallback in good order, charge bonuses still applying, or stomps? I don't know that I care about the charge bonuses applying on fallback in good order, but I don't have a strong memory of playing the fantasy combat without them. Like, I've said it a few times now, but I was playing fantasy back when I was like 14 or 15, and I wasn't particularly good. And I think most of the games probably would just slam units into each other. Oh, your unit's OP, so you win the game. I don't know that there was much level of thought in it at that point. So I don't really know what the previous versions of combat were like. I think getting charge bonuses if you push an opponent back, it seems fine to me. Maybe you could argue that that's something that makes it harder for infantry to do well, because if they blunt the charge on turn 1 and then they get, give fall back in good order, the charging unit still gets to like lance and furious charge and stuff. So maybe that is an issue that I just haven't thought much about. Stomps is definitely one of the issues. 360-degree charging on Pegasus Knights is a big one.
Yeah. And I was thinking as well, potentially the challenge mechanic as well.
Yeah. Yeah, fix that so my dragons don't have to get challenged.
That's the thing. At the moment, it's a really important tool, because if you don't do it, then you're just going to get minced by dragons. So you kind of need that as a mechanic in the game. But there's a look at that beast. There's a world where actually it can be a little bit unfun sometimes, especially if you are not one of the players that just have a bigger toy.
A filthy undead player
doing it. Actually, you can get challenged out, and it can make your monster not feel as powerful as it could do, because you just kill one model. So I think there's some interactions there that aren't as fun as they could be.
Sure.
And I'd always, with any of these rule changes, is really how can you make the game more fun? Can you tighten it up but also make it more fun?
Yes.
That's kind of the two angles you want to come at when you're thinking about changes you want to make.
I'd be very okay with that being changed in combination with other things.
Yeah.
And this is, I'm not pointing fingers at anyone specifically, because it's not really the regular viewers who do it. You lot are normally pretty normal, so good job. But I have noticed sometimes when you see online discourse about some things, people get very like, oh, but like this is the only thing we have. You can't nerf this, otherwise, we'll never be able to play. I'm not suggesting that you fix one thing. Everything needs to be fixed together. Let's not just do one thing at a time. Let's just go, here's the problem units, here's the problem issues. Let's, as a whole, get rid of them all. Jordan, no, you're not normal. I said as a whole. Anyone who's in the VIP chat regularly, you're a bunch of nutters. I quite like you, but you're not normal. Not by any stretch of the imagination.
Have you sent them the feet pics yet, Ed?
No.
They want them.
Right. Well, anything else for you before we wrap up?
No, I think that's it. I say get to Danny's events. They are really, really cool. You'll have a great time.